Hey everybody, welcome to Not Another Tooling podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my co-host, Mr. Matt Malcolm Brown. Matt, how are you?
I am good today. I'm good and cool.
We are experiencing a bit of a heat wave in the UK right now. And for those of our listeners outside of the UK, the UK has no idea how to deal with heat. So we're all struggling. I've got fans right here trying to keep me cool. So all good. Right, we are joined by a very, very special guest today. Thank you so much, Gianmarco from Halo, for coming on today. Hopefully you are in a cool spot, are you?
Yeah, the aircon in the office was broken for a couple of weeks, and it got fixed yesterday. I was gonna email to cancel the podcast if it wasn't fixed. But yeah, luckily I'm in a very cool room.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Matt, how did you get to meet Gianmarco? How do you two know each other?
A few years ago now. So I was doing a enterprise tooling strategy for an organization, and then it came to realization that they weren't really using the right ITSM stack or weren't getting the most out of it. So we effectively did a market exercise, and then through that market exercise, a bunch of other vendors as well, I got introduced to Halo. And then there was like a standout moment though, because going through the normal pre-sale cycle, people turning up to the meetings. I remember one of the vendors, and I won't say the names, they had like 4 people that joined the session, and there was one person talking. It was a very weird environment. But then Halo turned up. It was Tom and Benedict, I remember, and I just felt this really unassuming couple of guys. And Tom introduced himself as a salesperson, but was more technically on point than some of the other conversations I had. But the conversation flowed so well with the customer. And then to the point where I genuinely feel like I could have left the room, and then by the time I come back, these guys would have been arranged to go to the pub. So that changed my perception of like a software vendor dramatically. And then from there, it's been a conversations ever since.
Wonderful. What about you, Gianmarco? What's your history? How did you end up working for Halo, and what do you do at Halo?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story because I graduated in 2020. So I've been at Halo 6 years now. It was my first job out of university, and that was the summer of COVID, of course. So people say the job market isn't very good now, with AI, especially entry level. But it was rough back then as well. I can promise you that. I remember I always say I sent around 150 applications, and all application processes were like extremely long and daunting, and it will be like behavioral assessments and 7 stages. For Halo, it was a 5-minute chat on the phone with our CEO, Paul, and a 20-minute virtual like Zoom meeting. And it was a lot about like attitude, a lot more about whether I was the right fit for the organization, and that was very refreshing. So it was a 15-person company at the time, so I was like, I'm not sure this is going to work out. I'd love to say that I saw the potential. I'd love to say like I always knew that we would grow, but I didn't. I just wanted the job because the job market was rough. So yeah, that's how it all started. We were in our previous office, so it was really like, as I said, 15 employees, 1 person in Australia, 1 person in the US, everyone else in our office in Stowmarket in Suffolk. And after 6 years now, I lead our ITSM and ESM organization. So Halo is split in 2 main areas, which is software for MSPs, and then software for enterprise IT and enterprise service management. I lead the latter part. We are also scaling up CRM part, but that's like more up and coming, less established. So yeah, I work quite closely with our partner team, but also customer success and sales. With regards to Matt, we were doing this bid, and Tom and Bennett, my colleagues, came back and I was like, oh, this guy wants to know more about Halo. You should have a session with him. And then we had a call. I think Matt, with his experience, was quite I think refreshed as well because of how we did things, and he came to visit us, and yeah, he's been a good friend for I think 3 years now.
Amazing. So you've got to this stage where you were a 15-person company when you joined, right? Now you're £1 billion company, but you've not gone the usual route, right? The usual route be London, Silicon Valley, you know, you've got the usual SaaS, GTM playbooks, all that sort of thing. You know, why was Halo started in the first place? And then how did you get customers to take you seriously, right? Because this is a market that's been pretty dominated by some very, very established players for a very long time, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, being completely honest, Paul, one of the two co-founders and our current CEO, he started the company with his business partner. They started scaling it in 2011. That's when they hired the first person. But Paul just does things differently. Since the first moment I met Paul, he basically challenged every preconception I had of how, you know, CEOs of companies are. And I would say this is key to how we have scaled and how we will continue to scale, because Paul is very, very good at relinquishing control. So what do I mean by that? He was able to scale the company, keeping it 100% bootstrapped, so we never had any investment or any outside influence, by completely trusting the people in the business. Think of things like pipeline reviews with salespeople. We don't really do that. There is just a very, very tight-knit group with extreme levels of trust, and that's kind of culturally what made a difference. In more practical terms, though, how were we able to grow from 15 people to we're around 320 now? So headcount hasn't grown that much, but you know, revenue-wise, we went from £3 million to 150, and that's been 6 years. So it's quite impressive. I know you said $1 billion. That's the valuation. It's actually closer to 2 billion now. It's kind of I always say it's like paper money because we're not for sale. We're not interested in investment, but that's what, you know, the market values us at today. But yeah, in practical terms, there are two sides to, I think, how we were able to grow this much. The first side is that we were in no rush, right? The company was small but profitable, so we didn't have to accelerate back in the day, right? So, you know, when we were in 2020 and we had like 15 employees and made £3 million, that was still profitable, a viable business. We didn't have to pay back initial investors, so we could take our time to ensure we had product market fit. We weren't fighting a race to get to product market fit before the investors backed out or anything like that. We were really able to take our time to develop the product. So that is definitely one part of, you know, the reason for which we achieved product market fit. It's because we took our time. Like, there's no shortcuts. As I said, Paul has hired the first person in 2011, and we only really started growing quickly in 2020, 2021. So a lot of companies want to do it way quicker, and that tends to mean that they try to cut corners, in my opinion, from what I've seen, in achieving product market fit, from a functionality perspective, from a scalable architecture perspective, etc. So that's the first reason we took our time. The second reason is that we were able to be very, very commercially aggressive and attractive. And that's obviously the pricing strategy that continues to, being honest, be a key selling point for Halo today. And the reason for that is the way we scale the company, as I said, hiring entry level. So we don't really hire enterprise salespeople with a background, not because we don't believe they're very talented and useful, they are, but it just doesn't fit our way of selling and scaling. And that means that all of that makes the organization leaner, which in turn allows us to be a lot more competitive from a pricing perspective. So the fact that we only hire entry level, we only promote from within, we're very lean, means that since the start, we were able to be really, really aggressive with the pricing without compromising at all on functionality, because we did take 10 years to take the product from market. And there's a lot of code and functionality and things that you can ship in 10 years. And also a lot of customer relationships that can help you understand the market and build up the product. So if I was to point out two things, it'll be these two. Of course, there's other minor aspects, but yeah, that has always been Paul's vision, and I think internally we're very, very aligned to maintaining it that way.
It's really interesting, and I've been lucky to work for a couple of startup-ish companies who've taken that investment, and like you say, they're always on a race to do something to give the value back to the investors and therefore deliver products and sell as much as possible and all that sort of thing. So it's really interesting to hear a different approach, and it's clearly worked for you, right? Which is fabulous. So you talked about your commercial advantage there, but you know, when you look at the ITSM market today, right, there's a lot of established players there. Most are pretty feature complete, Gartner would say, although I hate that phrase. So when a client's coming out to market, you know, they're looking at all the usual players, right? ServiceNow, Atlassian, Remedy, whatever they're doing. What makes them, other than the attractive commercial model, what else makes them want to look seriously at Halo and make a decision for you?
Sure. So firstly, definitely agree with what you're saying. I think the word that's used a lot is it's a commoditized market, and it's saturated as well. Feature differentiation in ITSM, and that's what I do. My background is in the product management stuff, so I try to build feature differentiation. It's really hard. It's very, very, very hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not going to move the needle that much, because a lot of platforms are actually designed in similar ways with similar features, and the differentiation is usually mostly around how you approach a certain thing, as opposed to whether you can do it or not. And so the first part of my answer is we have always taken an approach where we wanted to make the platform as flexible and configurable as possible to adapt to different organization needs without making it overcomplicated. So allowing customization, but not to a too deep a level where it would cause issues with upgradability or potentially overcomplicate customer processes. So it's not, so a differentiator from a technical perspective was never like, we do this thing that no one else does. It's more like, we allow you, despite being, ITIL certified, for example, we've gone through other frameworks as well, and having processes out of the box aligned to best practice, we allow you to take that and adapt it for needs of your business without having to write lines of code or do 12-month projects. So that is more how we differentiate now, and less, to do with, we do shift left because we can deflect tickets with AI. Everyone can do that. Everyone is pretty much doing the same things. So that's the first part of, I would say, building differentiation from a product functional perspective. The other thing I think is quite relevant, though, I think you were asking, when organizations are evaluating service management platforms, how and why would they consider Halo? I would say that the second aspect is to do with how our sales approach works, right? How do we present the product? We are product enthusiasts, like we all are. Everyone in our sales team spends between 6 and 9 months in our support team when they join. So they literally solve customers' tickets about our product. So they become experts in the technology. Of course, not to the level where they go and lead a large enterprise transformation, but they do know the ins and outs on the product that they're presenting, that they're selling. They believe in it. They don't just get like some sales materials in a 2 or 3 week training. They actually have seen customers, how they use it, their pains, before they go and present it. And overall, our approach is very, very product centric. So we really enjoy, getting into the weeds with the customer, doing POCs. We're very, very use case centric as well. So when we get like a tailored demo, we'll go and like configure the platform to meet exactly the scenario for the customer. And that's usually a refreshing approach, because the customer or the prospect will see our willingness to work with them, and will actually see that we're selling the solution itself. We're not selling something woolier or less can create. It is literally just selling the platform and how much we love it.
That last bit there, that's what I was explaining at the beginning when we was having those early sessions. I think there was some requirements for that customer that weren't yet available in the product, and it wasn't a hard feat. And we had the same challenge with some other vendors at the time, and it seemed this we can't do that, or we've got to send it offshore to go develop. So that was really nice. But the bit of your first point around the extendability of the platform, I know for your Halo Sphere this year, there was awards for the organisation that extended the most. I don't know what you can say, or hey, that would be worthwhile sharing a bit, because their use cases, obviously we had a good session with them before, there's some cool use cases which you wouldn't have expected from this kind of platform. And they got rid of some like industry specific technology and tools because of these use cases they built in Halo. So if you could say a bit about that, that'd be cool. That would.
Yeah, one of my first projects when I joined, well, maybe not one of the first ones, but definitely my first couple of years at Halo, we built within the product and nothing outside. We built a process, let's say a mini app to manage a company car scheme, particularly the service side of a company car scheme. So, if you get a promotion, you can go and return your car and get a different car, and all of that, the slots for returning the car, the signing the documents, all of that was built through Halo. And that's firstly is an example of a good extension of service management, because it is a service. Of course, it's not IT, but it's still service management. And secondly is a good example of like the things that you can build on the Halo platform that go beyond the traditional incident request, problem change, CMDB. Of course, those are there, but even because of our licensing model, like the fact that it's not tiered, or it's also not consumption based, or there's no different modules, the point of it's certain organizations understanding that they can unlock more value without really having to pay anything extra. They start getting creative with the things that they can do with the platform. And for us, it's great because obviously it elevates the bar of capabilities of the product. It makes us it creates that differentiation that we were talking about in the previous point as well. So yeah, we're never shy, as and when it makes sense, of course, but we're never shy of trying to push the boundaries and the capabilities of the solution.
Amazing. That's really interesting. Maybe I'll come back to that in a bit, but just want to go back to, so you were talking about a customer's decision tree and your sales approach and your approach with the platform as well. So when you're in a competitive situation, with a customer, can you talk me through what, maybe a deal, obviously don't mention the customer, why were they looking to leave? What were they looking at the market for? And what ultimately, why did they choose Halo, do you think?
Yeah, being completely honest, the majority of conversations nowadays with complex organizations when they're looking at the market are about cost. And I know it's maybe a bit of a sticky point, because I get told a lot, you shouldn't just differentiate on cost, talk about something else that isn't cost. That's not really a good way to look at the market. You should sell capabilities and not cost. We can definitely sell capabilities, but we also say how it is. Why do companies go to market, which is your question, 90% of the time is because of staggering renewal costs and levels of service and standards continuously dropping. So there's absolutely no need for us to sugarcoat it. That's how it is. And however, that being said, it's never then the actual competition when it is about not the customer just going to market, but actually securing that business and convincing the customer to migrate to Halo. Then I totally agree, cost is not enough. Service management is often the backbone of an IT organization. It's often key to a lot of other processes. It is business facing, we forget this a lot of the time, but unlike other kinds of technologies, it's used by the entirety of the business. So it always comes with a lot of organizational change management. You really, really need to consider lots of different aspects of the migration and transformation of tooling when it comes to service management. And because of that, saving money and avoiding a staggering renewal costs is not going to be enough. So back to what gets them through the door is usually that. How do we actually secure the business? It's tied to what I was saying earlier. I believe that we have, firstly, a willingness to work with the customer. We're not, and this sometimes in some cases does backfire, but we're not an opinionated vendor, right? We're not a vendor that will go to a customer and say, nah, like everyone else does it this way, right? We tend to, on average, listen to the customer's requirement. Of course, sometimes things don't make sense, or customer is overcomplicating. So there is a level at which pushback is necessary. But I believe that in the industry, that's sometimes used a bit as a bit of an excuse, let's say, to justify the fact that the product doesn't meet a certain requirement. Oh, that's too complicated. Do it this way instead. That's almost never our approach. We're even considering like how we're structured as an organization, our average level of experience, we listen to customers a lot. It's not to say we do everything they say. I wish I could come here and say, if you're a Halo customer, tell me something, I'll definitely listen to you. That'll be a bit too extreme. But we tend to really try and meet customers where they are. And when you're evaluating the market and have complex requirements, perhaps are looking to replace multiple tools at once, or perhaps you've over-customized your previous solution, but you've got lots of value from that customization, we are going to listen and try to make the tool meet those requirements in a scalable way. So that's often where we win. And then the second part is ease of doing business, right? Ease of doing business is not just cost. Ease of doing business is we will not force you to sign or not push you to sign this quarter because we don't really do quarter reporting. We have the luxury of being a completely private company with our own self-made targets, but we don't have that kind of friction when it comes to being pushy or being overly aggressive in our sales strategy, and that does remove friction in our opinion. So yeah, that's the other side as well.
And on that last point there, just a quick one. Is I assume the terminology is still valid. The go live happy. Is that still?
Yeah.
I'm just touching that. I think that's the concept.
Well, we basically, you can look at it in two ways. Like, basically for us, we only really win the customer when they're live. So for our internal reporting, closing the deal is not sufficient. Like, we need to get the customer live to actually, complete their go live to actually fully recognize that business. And that's what we call it, go live happy. So not only live, but also satisfied with the go live, like, good level of adoption and deprecating the previous system. In practical terms, it's both like, when do we actually recognize the ARR in our internal objectives and metrics, but also, every time we sign our biggest deal, we have a bottle of champagne. But that it used to be the case. Like, whenever we signed them, we'd celebrate, and then we were like, no, that makes no sense. Like, what if in 6 months' time they're having a hard time? Like, it doesn't feel right. So we've changed that now. We've changed this like 2 or 3 years ago to only have this celebration once the customer has gone live.
Amazing. So, what you talked about. Maybe you could just give us a little quick overview of what is Halo's pricing differentiator, how you priced it makes it look attractive, but also how do you implement, right? Because this kind of go live happy approach you talked about, I suspect that most heads of IT operations are like, great, I can save a shed load on my licensing. However, the last time I implemented an ITSM project, it was a 3-year horrendously painful process, of which at the end we got something that was probably slightly better looking than we had 3 years ago. And so what's your approach? On the project duration, obviously the fact that we're so focused on like go live happy means that it's definitely in our best interest to not delay the project. We will almost, we do have an in-house implementation team. We do use partners in certain cases, but we also do services directly. And we never, ever do
T&M, like we only sell on fixed cost. It is in our best interest to have the project be on time and budget, and not extend it to get more hours, get more business. Like there's obviously the traditional issues with that, like scope creep and so on, and we are quite flexible with that, perhaps sometimes too flexible, which is something that we need to address at some point. But generally speaking, that means that we are overly committed to making the project a success in the shortest possible time frame, and we have the ability to do so. As the vendor, we have the ability to overcommit to resources, especially for strategic customers, and we bend our backs to make it work. That's what Paul always says. Like, we will do absolutely everything possible to make a project work. So that usually means that we're quite aggressive with timelines as well. That's definitely one of the things that as well is a bit different about working with us as opposed to working with a large, complex systems integrator that will have completely different ways of operating. In terms of licensing, quickly to answer your question.
Sorry, just a quick question. So can you put a rough figure on it? Do you say typically we're 50% less time to implement than or something?
It's exactly that. It's exactly. We always say on average, as a finger in the air, we say it is half the time to implement with a third of the resources and a quarter of the cost. That doesn't mean that it's a blanket figure that that will be true for everyone. Absolutely not. But on average, those are the numbers that we see.
Amazing. Sorry, you can go back to the price, answering my pricing question.
I was just going to answer the first part of your previous question, which was about licensing. It's really simple. Don't have much to say because it's all inclusive, right? So we spoke about being able to extend the platform, implement new processes. We have a workflow engine, an iPaaS, including an integration platform as a service included in the solution as well, where you can orchestrate external API calls. We have more than 200 pre-built connectors and integrations, like pre-built connectors to other tools. And all of that is included in the base license. So there's one licensing model. You only pay for your people, for your agents, not end users, for the ones providing the service, right? And that gives you access to all the functionality where nothing is consumption-based and nothing is tiered. So you don't have like a basic tier that gives you tickets and a pro tier that gives you the iPaaS, for example. We think that it just staggers adoption, and it makes it harder for customers to realize the full value of the solution. I love when I see ROI calculators online. I am sure there is some logic behind them, and if some organizations have ROI calculations, it's not a go at you. This is just my opinion. I just find it very, very, very hard to put a blanket ROI number, right, to something as complex as not just service management and incident management, but the entirety of what stuff goes into a service management platform. So basically, why am I saying this? Because we don't want them to have to do ROI estimates to upgrade from the base tier to the pro tier. No, we want to give you the platform. The more you build it, if you build correctly and with the right rationale, the more value you're going to get from it, right? That's it. You know what you're paying, then it's in your interest to use the platform as much as you can to get more ROI. Right? We truly believe that even if you do a standard ITSM implementation, given the functionality we have, given what we have out of the box as well, and the price point, we believe that definitely gives organizations ROI. But if they want to do more, they can just get more ROI without having to calculate or have cost barriers. So that's really the reason for it. You get absolutely everything included in the solution, and that's something our customers love. It's not going to change. The markets are saying that SaaS is what do you call it? SaaS apocalypse, and SaaS is dying, and I do see the reason for that. But for the foreseeable, we are not planning to change it because cost predictability is way too important to our existing customer base and everyone we speak to. The last thing I'll say on the licensing is that we also have a concurrent model, which can be useful. So that kind of gives you an example of where we try to be easy to do business with or meet the customer based on their requirements. We do have organizations, but because of how they're structured, they have very, very high number of actual agents, but low concurrence. So lots of people go in and update a change, say, an hour a week, right? We have a concurrent model mixed with a name model, so you can have name licenses for those who access the platform all the time and concurrent licensing without fixed ratio. So you can have 10-to-1, 20-to-1 in some extreme cases for those who use it less sporadically. That's not a cost conversation. That's a licensing approach conversation. That's particularly important because the cost of hosting SaaS is almost entirely tied to who's logged in, updating stuff, right, and using the system. If you've got 10,000 users, but there's 500 logged in, it's the 500 that are like creating your cost cap. Why would you be charging for 10,000? It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, that also gives you maybe a bit of an insight as to how we think as a business.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's really interesting, and you can see straight away why it's such a great proposition. I've spoken to so many organisations over the years that just feel like their hands are tied, and then their bills are going up, and and you look at the sales and even the CSM model these days for a lot of customers, and and their your competitors are often bonusing and paying these people on growing the revenue from their customers, right? So it's in their interest to do more, whereas you've kind of got the opposite thing going on, which you can see why customers like that. So let me just change tack a bit, because I feel like this is another podcast where we could probably speak for hours and hours, if not days and days. But every podcast, everybody is asking AI, right? Well, I'm go back to your point a minute ago. I totally agree with you. SaaS isn't dead. You're not going to just ask Claude to build you an ITSM platform tomorrow that integrates with everything and does all of this sort of thing, and then be able to maintain it. It ain't going to happen, right? Certainly today. But in terms of your product, where do you see AI adding value? Is it in the product? Is it in the back end and the way you're building the product? And how does your approach differ to what other people are doing in the market, which is very AI is everything, which is more, I think, to drive up their share price than actually to do anything to do with the product. But yeah, big questions.
Yeah, no, I'm always quite open about being skeptical about the AI hype, but that's not to say that there's no value in AI. I just feel like it tends to be a race as to who can say AI the loudest, which is frustrating, as opposed to focusing on where the value is. So I'm going to give my opinion on like two things I really, really see. To be honest, not so much providing value yet, but I can see it as tangible things that we're working on that in time, we already have the features there, but we have to work on the adoption strategy, right? That in time will actually provide significant value. One is the agents framework, right? I do see software system and SaaS systems becoming a lot more useful as system of records where the governance is held, like the permissions, the controls, the structure, the data model, the operating model. So that's in an ITSM space, like where we are. That will be more like workflow executions, what tools you have available, like what can you do when a user requests access and so on. That has to be stored somewhere secure, and that belongs in the ITSM system and the CMDB, permissions, role-based access control, etc. But AI will definitely continue to help a lot with the execution, right? We've seen this with the MCP, for example. I do see chat-based experiences for a lot of processes becoming more dominant. It is more user-friendly to be able to do things via chat or via a terminal. So I do think in practical terms that it will become more and more common to have, rather than logging a ticket through a form, like creating a ticket through a chat in Slack, in Teams, and the ITSM tool connecting to that and having basically the ability, the agents to be able to orchestrate that request and write it back to the system of record based on the permissions and so on. That has not happened yet. If you see what organizations are doing, I think it will take a long time to change user behavior and adoption, but I do see that happening. So AI agents, MCP, and the ability to orchestrate work and how system of records are updated, so not so much browser and a lot more like terminal chat conversation, I definitely see that happening. And I also think that that will reduce manual effort for a lot of things, not all of them though, only those things that actually can be automated. So it's not that much of a transformation in terms of like efficiency, because companies that have the ability to have automation, they already have those things automated, right? Everything that, automation has progressed so much for the past 5-10 years that the ability to automate stuff is already there. What's going to change is the experience, like how easily can you get an automation, right? You don't have to necessarily script it. You can use your MCPs and your agentic frameworks, having agents talking to each other to achieve that. So building automation will become easier and easier with AI, in my opinion, and that will change the way end users, customers interact with ITSM. That's one part where we are starting a journey in seeing that, and I'm talking specifically about ITSM. The other part is the building stuff, the configuring stuff, right? I believe Anthropic, when they released Claude Code, it was the first time I saw it, I would say it was scary, like the things that you can actually see it do. And I believe that will, in terms of the building, we're already using that in some ways internally in the way in which we review code. Some cases we scan our code base as well. But more importantly, talking about the product, that can help with those kind of AI initiatives can help a lot in the way you configure the system, right? Again, configuring and administering a platform can be a better experience, like less clicks, less browser-based. And the way in which, we fed our API, configuration API to Claude Code and just started, right? It was more a POC, of course, in an isolated environment, but started saying like, build a form and a workflow, right? It can already do a lot. So I do see that making configuration implementations a lot simpler in the future. At first I found it scary, but then I realized that, it's not a way to not have the basics. Like you still need the basics. Like Claude Code in the hands of our solutions architect that we have that's been doing ITSM implementations for 4 years is one thing. In the hands of a graduate who doesn't really understand how an ITSM process should be built yet, right? It might do some things, but it's not going to do them right. So those are the two things where I see the most value coming. But I do think it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's not about like, who gets there quicker in terms of having the capabilities. Having the capabilities to do that is relatively easy. It's more about like, how can you drive adoption? Last thing I'll say, as you can see, I'm a talker, is around what our competitors are doing. We are focusing on AI use cases, I mentioned too, that are relevant to what we do today, right? We continue to be a service management backbone with orchestration, automation, and workflow layered on top. We extend the platform beyond traditional ITSM, and we want to apply AI to make the experience of dealing with ITSM better and make the experience of building those processes better, right? We're not suddenly going to become an AI company. We're not an AI company. We know our limits. We're not going to be able to be the backbone for AI governance or have the ability to control what agents outside of our system are doing. And that's because that's not what our customers chose us for. They chose us to be the service management backbone, and that's not what our prospects are looking to do with our system. And also, we are hyper focused on what we do. We think that differentiation is key. So that's going to continue to be the case.
Amazing. Amazing. There's so much more we could dive into. I'm just going to go to the last question, and which is, what does the future look like for Halo, right? You're moving your headquarters to Ipswich, right? I think you're hiring 400 grads, is it? over the next 3 or 4 years? Obviously, you're trying to grow your business globally, right? It's a lot to do. So what does Halo look like in 5 years? And just, I've got a question coming from one of our listeners that's kind of relevant is, how do you plan to keep hold of the culture of innovation that you've got, which is so strong as you scale up?
Yeah, firstly, the answer is we're doubling down on what we're doing now, right? So moving to Ipswich, we scaled the company in Suffolk. It's unusual. We are, we're in Stowmarket, a town with, I believe it's maybe 25,000 people. It's tiny. And we really like the fact that we get local people. Of course, that doesn't apply to me. I grew up in Rome. I'm from Italy. I'm an outlier. Most of the people here are people from Suffolk that went to university, did not want to go to London. They felt like they were forced to go to London or a big city because there were no opportunities locally for them. We want to give those people an opportunity. We believe quality of life, especially for people who are good at what we do, can be better outside of big cities. Of course, that doesn't apply to everyone, but that's what we believe. And that's how we built our organization. Lots of people that have progressed at Halo are local, love that they have a local opportunity. So we're just moving 10 miles from Stowmarket, where we're now, to Ipswich. The reason we're doing that is because there's no building that's big enough in Stowmarket for our ambitions. So we're purchasing the Willys building, one of the most historic buildings in Ipswich. It was a Norman Foster building, actually. It's Grade 2 listed, I believe. So yeah, that's continuing to doubling down on scaling in Suffolk, especially for our HQ. We do have overseas offices that are growing very, very quickly. They're just hubs that we have to be close to our customers. We have 2 in the US, 1 East Coast, 1 West Coast, and 1 in Australia. We're about to open 1 in New Zealand as well. So the global growth is also a key part of what we want to do. But yeah, for now, in terms of the HQ, the plan is to stay in Suffolk. In terms of the initiative and the graduates conversation, we have always just grown by hiring graduates and making them world class at what they do, just by working very, very closely with talented and ambitious people. Of course, I started a podcast saying that's how I joined the organization 6 years ago, but that's true for everyone I work with day in, day out. So the graduates initiative is because we think we will need 1,000 staff by we're currently 300. So that's how we're going to fill those positions. That's how we're going to get people to serve our customers. And I guess a lot of the initiatives that we have now, for example, we're an Ipswich Town Football Club front of shirt sponsor. That is because we want to elevate our brand as an employer as well. Like, we really work hard on our employer branding, especially locally, because we want people to know that there is an option for them in Suffolk to have a great career. In terms of the culture, it's definitely a challenge to maintain culture as you scale. But I think that it's slightly easier for us because of how we're organized internally. Right? We firstly, there's a lot of similarities, right? As I said, the vast majority of people that join the organization are from the area, right? They're a similar demographic, and that means that we really, really bounce off each other a lot. We have a similar way of learning, and that kind of similarity, especially, as I said, from a generational demographic perspective, makes it a lot easier to find alignment. Like, we really, really see eye to eye a lot. And the other thing is that we are divided, like, we are organized internally in small pods. We call them nebulas. So we have, especially for the less complex, large customers, so for the smaller ones or local organizations and so on, we tend to have groups of 1, 2, or 3 people that work together and serve the entire customer lifecycle, from an inbound lead coming in to the sales process to the implementation. And they kind of are responsible, because they work 24/7 in that small group. They're responsible. There's a leader that's been with us 4 or 5 years. They really get the culture. They're responsible for spreading it, which is a lot easier than having it trickle down from the top with like less frequent interaction. So that's kind of a practical thing that we're doing to make sure that it becomes easier as we scale.
Just a very quick one on the sales front. You mentioned around as the inbound lead comes through. I think it's very worthwhile talking about your outbound efforts as an organisation for sales.
You mean the non-existent outbound efforts? Yeah, we've never done any. It's a luxury, I get it, but it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. We've never been in a rush. Even now, we love growing. We love the fact that the company seems to be going from strength to strength, but we have no pressure. Like, the only pressure that we have is the one that we put ourselves under. There's no outside pressure, which means that we only grow organically, right? So luckily we have enough demand from the market that allows us to do this. But yeah, we never really felt the need to have a BDR team or an outbound led sales motion. We believe in growing based on word of mouth, we call it. So just someone purchasing Halo, having a great experience, we get them go live happy, and then they tell someone else, and that helps grow our reputation. If it doesn't happen, it's because we're not doing something right. So why would we do outbound? Luckily for now, it's always happened, but you know.
I'm just going to
amazing. And you just before you bring the question on, because there was a point you made a minute ago that I just wanted to pick up on, which was you were talking about your sponsorship of Ipswich Town. I've seen you all over the snooker, and you want to be known as a great employer. I hear that you're doing a Halo festival locally.
Yeah.
Is this true?
Yeah, it is. We tend to maybe not overshare this because we don't want to muddy the waters, and we want to make it clear as to what is what. So when people see us on, for example, the snooker World Championships, even the Ipswich Town initiative, that is the brand that we're trying to build from an employer perspective, almost more like, almost as if it was B2C, right? Because it's members of the public, not buyers, that we're trying to connect with. Sometimes it does help us connect with buyers and does generate some demand. But honestly, if that was the reason we'd be doing it, we'd be down money. Like, trust me, we don't get enough leads or attention, or we don't generate enough if our objective was just to be like, oh, we're going to sponsor the snooker because we're going to get leads from it, right? No, the reason we're doing it is because we want to be seen as the #1 employer in Suffolk today and the #1 employer in the country in 3 years. That is as important as growing our ARR, having our customers happy. Of course, they go hand in hand, but we really need some help in terms of elevating the brand, as I said, from an employer perspective. How does that link to the festival? As I said, we're very, very big on hiring locally. There was the opportunity to do a music festival in Ipswich, and we think that's Ipswich has been perhaps an underdeveloped part of the country. It suffers from brain drain. Like, lots of people actually go to big cities, as I said, because they think that that's where there is opportunity. So being able to host a festival in Ipswich with our name, it's called the Halo Festival, is a great opportunity to connect with young people in locally, basically, and hopefully have them work for Halo once they graduated. We also have a school leavers program, so some people do join the organization without having gone to university. But yeah, the vast majority is graduates.
Amazing. Sounds cool. You got the Scouting for Girls, Two Door Cinema Club.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit jealous of your position. You probably get to meet all the bands and all this stuff.
I'm excited about Natasha Bedingfield as well. That's
good. You're right. Matt, do you want to bring on a couple of questions? Because I'm conscious we are running out of time. So it's a good one from Taran. So how do you create psychological safety in such a, I guess, a young kind of set of employees, really?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things is that we're all very approachable. I am quite guilty, I don't know why, I don't know how, of people internally for some reason seeing me as intimidating. I'm very conscious of it. So I feel like if some of our staff are watching this, they might say that They don't, for some reason, they don't feel so safe around me. But luckily, it's not just about me. We have lots of initiatives to connect to people who are just joining the organization, even people in positions of leadership or more experienced people from day one, right? I'll give you an example. We have a concept of support shifts, like new starters, like graduates, when we do an intake, they all start by shadowing support calls, like they work on the support desk and kind of act as the first line, but it's a good way for them to get exposure of, as I said, what the product does, what the customers use it for, etc. And even myself, one day a month, I'll go spend the entire day as an escalation point, right, with those people. So you get to know them, you get to help them from day one, they get to come to you. I'm using myself as an example, but it could be our head of customer success, Benedict, who Matt knows very well, who's doing a support shift today. It could be, a very, very experienced consultant that in between site visits to see our biggest customers goes and spend a full day with our support staff. And that level of personal touch, approachability, like I can go to this person because they are going to help me. They sit down, take time to explain things to me, makes them feel like they can get comfortable. And the other thing is that we really, really have pretty limited hierarchy in the organization. Like the only reason we'd have a hierarchy is when it's necessary just to make decisions. Like at one point, the whole thing about too many chefs, right? You can't have too much deliberation. We want to make decisions quickly. So the only real level of hierarchy that we have is around decision making, right? Who ultimately makes the call? Who do you go to if you're unsure? But other than that, like people are giving a lot of autonomy, a lot of trust from day one, and that is what usually tends to make them quite safe. Like they know, like for example, here the question is, put the hand up and say I've messed this up. One of the first things Paul says in his induction speech is ask for forgiveness, not for permission, right? Not because you actually need to ask for forgiveness, but it's much rather you do something and get it wrong than have to ask or be unsure. No, we want people to go and make their own mistakes, learn from their own mistakes. Hopefully they're not too bad. Even if they are, we have trust in them that they'll be able to rectify them. So that's how we operate really at scale.
Super. Amazing. Right. We have covered so much today. I'm going to attempt to sum this up, probably fairly badly.
So one quick question. There's a comment that's just come in from YouTube about a bit messing up. I've messed up too. Let me bring it on the screen 1 second. I've messed up too. I thought this was about Halo the game with the green guy.
Well, yeah, how you've learned something about the world of service management today, or how to scale a company. So we started talking about the birth of Halo and what's different. You talked about that it's been bootstrapped. There isn't this race to product market fit because of investors, and because you've hired kind of graduates, you've always been able to be commercially attractive, and you took your time 10 years to get the product to market. You then talked about what's different. What else is different? You said your approach is different. You're as flexible and configurable as possible. Customization without complicating things or bringing the upgrade challenging. Your sales approach is very different. You have product enthusiasts who sat in customer support. They understand that, and you're very tech, product and use case centric. And of course, we came back to cost again, because 90% of the time, that's why people are looking to change. And then we talked about a client example, and you said, well, actually, the ease of doing business with Halo is much better. You're not driving them to deals at a certain time of the quarter, whatever. And you have this go live happy approach, and that's when the deal's closed, is when the customer is live and happy. And you talked about being 50% quicker to implement with a third of the resources at a quarter of the price, which is a phenomenal strapline, I think. And you talked about your pricing being all inclusive, so you pay for the people, the agents, rather than module and another module, and I can't do this and you can do that. You can do everything, right? Which is great. Then we started talking about AI and where it's going in the future, and you said, look, it's likely to be for you in a couple of areas. Firstly, it's about how do you use AI to make what you do and your users' lives better, and therefore becoming a system of record for workflow execution, etc. in the agentic world is a natural thing. And then also helping your customers to build and configure Halo as they go on via the likes of Claude Code, building a form in a workflow, for example. And then we talked about the future, and the future for you with your huge scaling is just doubling down on what you do now. Nothing different. You're moving into a lovely grade 2 listed Norman Foster building. You're hiring a shed load of graduates. So you want to be at 1,000 staff by 2030, but you're in Ipswich because you want to be known as a great local employer through your sponsorship of staff, the Halo Festival, and all that sort of stuff. And then we talked about how do we scale that culture, and it's by having a similar demographic of people. You talked about having these small pods, not having a hierarchy really, and everyone being approachable. They get to interact with you guys in the leadership team on a regular basis. So hopefully I've summed that up all right. Any major points I've missed?
No, not from my perspective. The only thing I'd say is I've learned that I need to speak more concisely.
No, it's good. Perfect timing. Matt, we've got 4 minutes left. What is coming next on the podcast for our listeners?
Well, just before we talk about what's next, to cater for Gianmarco's excessive talking, we are also going to be arranging a follow-on session with Halo, but we're going to be doing a physical setting. We're trying to work on the exact format, but it's going to be likely the back end of summer, so September time, potentially workshop based. So if people are interested in having a working session or an informative session, we're still working on the details. Just message either myself, Austin, and we'll add you to the list, and then we'll publicize it likely in the next 4-6 weeks or so maximum, to allow enough time for people to make travel arrangements. But September time is the most likely time we'll be running it for an in-person session for the podcast, which will be our first at that point. As for our next session, we have a talented individual from Ardoc attending. Ardoc is an enterprise architecture planning tool, and we're going to be talking about a very non-sexy topic but essential, and it's around the governance around AI and its visibility of what it is, where it is in your organization, how it's been used, and also the cost element of it. So not a AI session for the AI's sake. This is getting control of the visibility on how your organization use AI, and more relevant for some European customers because there's a EU AI Act, so you get fined a lot of money if you get it wrong. So this is very much a getting control of it rather than a strategic level conversation.
Super. Amazing. I've got so many questions for you, Gianmarco, for our in-person thing after our chat today. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for giving up your time today to come on the session. It's been so insightful. Really, really appreciate it. So yeah, thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you again on our in-person session.
Yeah, great. Thanks for all the questions, and yeah, it's been amazing. Always like speaking with Matt as well. He's a friend of Halo, I always say, and yeah, it was great meeting you as well. And yeah, look forward to the in-person one.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.